what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go over the types of tests that you're going to want to include in your procedure for your lab next week. All right, so we're going to go over what those tests are, okay, and why you're going to use them, and then when you write up your procedure, you're going to give a more detailed way to do that test, okay, an explanation, that kind of stuff. So we're going to kind of go over that stuff today, and then on Monday, you'll have all class to get the kind of pre-lab activity stuff done. That is, get your problem written, your hypothesis, your materials, your procedure, okay? And that's going to take, if we do a good job of it, pretty much all of Monday's class to do. Okay. Then on Tuesday, we'll actually go into the lab, perform the lab, get the results, whatever, and then hopefully come back and have a chance to do a little bit of analysis in class before the bell goes. All right, so that's the plan for the next couple of days for you guys. Now, the tests that we're going to want to run have to do with what we talked about yesterday, which are the differences in properties between ionic and molecular compounds. All right, so this podcast will be useful to you, again, when you are doing your lab report and figuring out which unknown substance is which. Okay? All right, so the first test you're going to want to do, and the reason you want to do it first is because a lot of these properties will be lost after you do other tests. Okay, for example, one of the things we're going to want to do is test solubility. But once we put these substances in water, are they changed? Yeah, at least physically they're changed. They dissolve. Their crystals are gone if they were crystalline. All right. Their odor may disappear if they had an odor previous to that. Things of that nature. So we want to do these observable properties first, okay, so that we can get them recorded before any of our other tests interfere with them. All right. So the first observable properties that you want to look at is the color. Okay, because color can tell us what from yesterday. Are there a few colors we want to look for? Okay, green is one of the colors, pink and blue. All right, because those will tell us about the presence, most likely, of 3 metals. All right, and if we're getting a list, and you are getting a list of the possible identities, and only one of the possible identities is a nickel-containing compound, do you probably know right off the bat, just by looking at color, that that's probably the nickel compound? Yeah, okay? So we want to look at those. You don't just want to go, oh, well, that one's green, it's definitely nickel, and not test another thing about it. You still want to get a full set of data for it just to confirm. Because if it's a nickel-containing compound, it's probably also what kind of a compound? Ionic, because it would have a metal and a non-metal, right? So it should dissolve easily in water and should conduct electricity and all those kinds of things. Okay, so color, super important. Want to look at that because that can tell us probably 3 of our unknowns pretty much right off the bat. All right, state of matter, solid, liquid. There aren't any gases, but I mean, you get the idea. So we're looking for solids. If they're solid, they're likely ionic, especially if they are not just solid, but crystalline. Now, what if you're looking at a solid, but you're not sure if it's crystalline? How would you be able to tell for sure? Okay, we don't have any microscopes. That would be a good way to check. But what's a way you could check without touching it with your bare hands? What does sugar do if you put pressure on it? Yeah, it crushes, right? All right. Does salt do the same thing? To some extent, yeah. All right, but if you're looking at something and you're not sure whether it's crystalline, I mean, you know sugar is crystalline just by looking at it. Okay, if you put some pressure on it with like a glass stirring rod or something like that, and just kind of twist, like you would if you were doing like a mortar and pestle and you were grinding it up, if it doesn't grind into a finer powder, was it crystalline? No. Right? Because there are some molecular compounds that are solids at room temperature. Okay, but other than sugar, which is also crystalline, okay, most of those molecular compounds are soft. Examples could be butter. Right? Butter is a molecular compound that is a solid at room temperature, but it's soft. It's not crystalline. Coconut oil, candle wax, okay, things like that. Those are all like waxy, soft solids at room temperature. So you could just kind of put a little pressure on them, and that'll tell you for sure whether they are crystalline in nature or waxier in nature. Right? Obviously, liquid, if it's a liquid, it's a dead giveaway that it's what kind of compound? Molecular, because all ionic are crystalline solids at room temperature. So you eliminate probably 2/3 of the list of unknowns if you have a liquid in front of you. All right. Now, what if you have two molecular compounds, both are liquid, both are clear? How do you tell them apart? Well, solubility, what if they're both soluble? Two of your unknowns next week are going to be clear liquids, molecular compounds. pH could be a way to tell them apart. Okay, they will have a slightly different pH, but in case you can't tell the difference on your pH paper, are there other physical properties that two liquids, let's say they're water and alcohol, might be able to be told apart? Smell. Now again, we're not going to put our nose right over the sample and sniff. Okay, we are going to waft. All right, does alcohol have a distinctive smell? Okay, yeah, it does. All right, you've all smelt like rubbing alcohol. Hopefully, none of you have smelt booze, but okay, yeah, it has a very kind of antiseptic smell to it. All right, and so that would be a way to tell them apart. Is it a physical property? Sure it is. Odor is a physical property. So we would definitely want to do an odor test, okay, that included some wafting, okay, of the substances. Okay? Everyone follow me there. Are most of the substances going to have odor? Actually, probably not, especially the ionic compounds, the crystalline solids, they typically don't have much smell. All right, but the smell is pretty distinctive for the ones that do have it. What if vinegar is one of them? Are you going to be able to tell that pretty much right away? Yeah. Did we say, though, the other day that all acids have a vinegar-like smell? Yes. Right. So there'll be things like that that you'll kind of have to work in and out of, and hopefully you'll be able to tell them apart using some of their other properties. Okay. Vinegar. If we have it there, is it going to have a really low pH or is it a weaker acid? Can you eat vinegar? Yes. Okay. So it obviously isn't going to have a pH of 2. Right? If it's vinegar, it's going to have a pH acidic, but not strongly acidic. So it would be like maybe 4, okay, 4 or 5, somewhere in there. Certainly different than the really strong acid that's going to be part of your unknowns. Okay, nature of matter, like I said, crystal, cloudy, clear, okay, those kind of things. We said how you could test that with kind of the crushing test with a stirring rod, okay, state of matter, all that kind of stuff. So this is going to have to be your first test. Now, when you write up your procedure, this needs to be done kind of in detail, right? Like, don't just say, step 2, perform physical properties test. Because someone who's not in this class looks at that and goes, I don't know what that is. How do I do that? Right? So you have to explain to them. Physical properties includes, first off, observing the color. Okay? Please record color as appropriate in chart. Okay? And then you could say step B of step number 2 is record crystalline nature, or, things like that. Just have a step-by-step thing. Here's what you need to look for. Here's what you need to write down. All of that stuff needs to be written in a procedure. It's got to be that detailed. All right, so your second test, solubility. We're going to have a little depression plate. Okay, it's called that because it has little depressions on it, not because it's sad. Okay, it looks like this. If you wear contacts, each one of those depressions is about the same size as the basket in your contact case. All right, so fairly small. What you're going to do is put a small amount of each unknown in one of those depressions. Okay? Then you can perform a solubility test by adding what? Yeah, adding some distilled water. Should you try and use about the same amount of everything? Yeah, it's not really a fair test if you put twice as much of one thing and like 2 crystals of another. Okay? When you're doing a solubility test, should you also add the same amount of water? Yes. Now, this is a very small amount of water that's going to be in there. Just because something doesn't dissolve completely doesn't mean it wasn't soluble. Right? How do you know if something dissolved at least partially? Yeah, the crystals will change shape. If it's something like copper or nickel or cobalt, the water will turn... Yeah, it'll turn color, right? The water will change color. Okay. Sometimes you can actually see the material swirl a little bit as it dissolves. Okay. With things like alcohol and strong acids, you can actually see them swirl a little. Okay, in there as they dissolve. And some things will actually change temperature. All right. You'll have 2 materials that, when you add water to them, will have temperature changes. Okay. One will get hotter, one will get colder when you add the water. So should you be putting a thermometer in there as you add the water? Yes. Otherwise, you will miss the temperature change. Okay? Agreed? I mean, if you just go, oh, good, solubility test is done, now I'll take the temperature, you've missed it. Remember, we're dealing with like a tiny amount of water here. If we don't detect that temperature change immediately, it'll dissipate and be gone in moments. All right? Well, but the temperature is going to be the room temperature before you put the water in, right? All right, so when you do that solubility test, obviously we look for dissolving, okay? And these are the things you need to tell people in your procedure to watch for. In performing a solubility test, you add, fill the depression so it's 3/4 full. Tell them how much to put in there, okay? Tell them what to watch for and what to record, okay? Record any evidence of dissolving, crystal shape change, color change, temperature change, odor, all right? If anything actually made a smell when you added the water to it, stuff like that, right? Tell them what to look for. Tell them what to record in a chart, okay? Because those are the things I'm going to be looking for when I read through your procedure. I want to make sure that that procedure is so simple and so clear that a 5-year-old could follow it, okay? All right, third test. Once you've got it in solution, we would probably want to check the conductivity, okay? All right, I'll let you write that down here, guys. All right, so the conductivity test, look for the lights, and most importantly, you need to put this in your procedure. You need to rinse that thing in between tests. You don't want to go from, let's say, your strong acid, which is going to have a great conductivity reading, and then go to your next sample. Because if that's water, there's still strong acid and ions on the tips of the leads of the conductivity tester. You'll contaminate that solution and actually get a conductivity reading. All right, we don't want that. So you will actually be given a small wash bottle. Okay, and it's filled with distilled water, and you just spray it off in between tests. You don't need to dry it, just spray it off with distilled water between tests. Okay, and then check the next one. Okay, so that one essentially what you'll be recording, and you can tell them is record the number that is on the reader, okay, between 1 and 10. And then lastly, you'll want to do your pH test. Okay, and we said the reason you want to do your pH test last is because that's a color change. Is that an indication of a chemical reaction? Yeah, your substance chemically reacts with the pH paper. That changes it chemically, and now after that, there are no other physical tests you can do that would be valid because you have now changed the sample chemically. All right, so pH test needs to be last. All right, so you dip that in, you record the value in your chart, and then throw the piece of paper away. Questions on that? Is that pretty straightforward? Okay, so those are the 4 tests you're going to want to do. Now, you're going to get, and I think I showed you this the other day, okay, this handout, right? Science 10, Properties of Compounds, Lab Design Activity. It's actually out of 35. I got a typo up there. Okay, so the problem we're investigating, given several unknown samples, how can we classify them as either ionic, molecular, acids, and bases in order to find their identity, right? So the problem here is how can we identify unknown substances using their properties, all right? Do you need to restate that problem in your own words in the form of a question when you do a report? Yes, sir. Yes, you do. I just did that for you, but no one wrote it down. Oh. See how important it is to listen. Okay, your design. You got to identify your manipulated, responding, controlled variables. In this lab, what are you changing each time? Right, the materials. Your unknown is different each time. Are you running the same battery of tests on every single one of them? Yeah, right? You're doing all those tests we just went over on every single one. Okay? What's different is that you're testing something different every time. And then, what are you hoping is going to be different as a result of testing different things? Okay, the outcome. The results of the tests should be different if we're testing different things every time. Agreed? Boy, you guys really need to write this stuff down. I'm practically giving it away here. It's a good thing I'm recording this. You might be able to get them later. Hint, hint. All right. Then your controlled variables, anything that you have to keep the same between every single one of those batteries of tests. Right? We talked about some of those things as well already. Okay? Anything that could interfere with your results needs to be kept the same for every unknown sample. All right, then you'll have your hypothesis. Okay, your hypothesis is an if, and then statement. Remember, the if part tells me, okay, what you think the answer to the problem is. In this case, you got to tell me how you're going to identify the unknown samples. Okay? In the and part, you describe the experiment briefly. Don't rewrite the procedure for the and part. Just tell me briefly what you're going to do. And then the then part, what are your expected results? Okay? Is that ringing a bell for everybody? All right. For materials on your lab report, you write C sheet, right? You don't need to write all of these out, right? But these, okay, down below here, are your possible identities for the unknown materials. All right, ammonium nitrate, copper 2 sulfate, ethanol, sodium chloride, sodium hydroxide, hydrogen chloride, sucrose, okay, which is sugar, okay, water, cobalt 2 chloride, nickel 2 chloride, and paraffin. What is paraffin? They use it in lamps. They also use it in something else that gives off light. Nope. You see them at church all the time. Candles, yeah, okay. It's candle wax. That's what paraffin is, candle wax. All right. So what you're going to want to do kind of beforehand, like on Monday, you're going to sit down with your group. You're going to write out all this stuff. You're going to write up your procedure. Okay? But another good thing to do would be to start thinking about what some of the properties of these things are. I would even say go as far as to maybe when you're on Monday looking at your stuff and you got it all written up, is Google it. Okay? And see what are some of the physical properties of these things so I know what to look for tomorrow. Right? Does that give you a pretty good idea then when you start doing your tests what you'll get? Right? That's not cheating. That's using the resources available to you. All right? And then obviously you won't be able to do this part, okay, the analysis, until you have all of your data. Okay? So on Monday, like we said, we're going to do all of this first part, all the pre-lab activity, problem design, hypothesis, and you are going to write out your detailed procedure. Your procedure for this is probably going to be close to a page long. Okay? Because we want to be detailed. We want to say, here's the things you have to do. The other thing you're going to want to build on Monday is a chart to record all of your data in. So once you've decided on the procedure, then you can build a chart that will contain the observations your procedure will provide. All right? Is that making sense to everyone? Okay. Kian. You can draw it out for now, but when you hand it in, I would prefer it was, yeah, made a little different. Or you might want to, on Monday night, before we do this, is type it up and then bring it in, handwrite it in, and then copy it over to your computer later. Okay? All right. So that gives you an idea of what we're going to be doing here over the next couple of days. In terms of some lab safety stuff, okay, because we always have to talk about this. On Tuesday, clothing-wise, all right, you cannot wear any like flip-flops or sandals or anything like that where the tops of your feet are exposed. Because if you spill something on the lab table and it runs off, it'll run onto your unprotected feet. Okay, so you need to wear shoes. You can sacrifice your shoes as opposed to burn your feet. All right, so you have to have proper footwear. Other things, okay? If you got like a heavy sweater on, or that's very baggy, or has drawstrings or anything like that, that when you lean forward might get into the materials, that can't be worn. All right? Or you got to tie up the drawstring and tuck it in, okay? Something like that, so that it doesn't get into the lab materials. Everyone follow me there? Okay? Long hair needs to be tied back. My suggestion is always that you just put a hair tie in your science binder. Right? Always have a hair tie in your science binder. When we do a lab, tie your hair back. Okay? Because again, if you've ever seen what hair looks like after it gets dipped in acid, you're not going to be very happy. Okay? It's like what it looks like after it's been set on fire. It curls up and smells awful. Yeah, you don't want that happening to your hair, so make sure it's tied back, okay, if you have long hair. You don't need to bring rubber gloves or anything like that. We don't need those. You will be given a lab apron, okay? But I would suggest probably not wearing your favorite outfit on Tuesday, just in case. All right, you wouldn't want it ruined. All right, so you can have a lab apron, and obviously we provide you with safety goggles. Now, if you wear glasses, the goggles go over your glasses, okay? Because if you look here, okay, can stuff get in over the top? In over the sides, under the bottom, okay? your regular prescription eyeglasses simply do not protect your eyes sufficiently, right? So you'll wear the big goggles that fit over top. Yes, you will all have goggle face when we're done. Deal with it, okay? It goes away after about an hour, all right? But you will all have goggle face when we are done this. Okay? Better to have goggle face than be blinded forever, all right? I think you would agree. Okay. So just be ready for that. If you normally wear glasses but you have contacts, it might not be a bad idea to put the contacts in for lab day, oddly enough. That way, you know, you don't have to have the extra pressure of the glasses pushing on the arms of your regular glasses. All right. Other things about lab safety, obviously we don't take any food or drink in there. Okay. You know, because it could be contaminated by vapors from the materials and whatever else. So all that stuff will have to stay in here. If you need to get a drink during the lab, you can always come back over, get a drink, and come back. When you are done the lab, what does everybody need to do?
Wash their hands.
Yes, yeah, everybody needs to wash their hands. Okay, make sure you get everything off of your hands, all that kind of good stuff. Now, in terms of behavior in the lab, be forewarned. I am completely intolerant of any horseplay or other behaviors that will endanger the safety of people in this class. If you misbehave in the lab, you will be doing no more labs for the rest of the semester. Okay? You will stay in here, we will do the lab, and I will give you the data. Okay? But you will not be an active participant in any labs if you endanger anyone else in the lab. Is that perfectly clear with everybody? I have done it before, and I hope not to have to do it again, but no, I will. Okay? So just be aware, none of that goes on. Okay? Especially using the wash bottles as a water pistol. All right? They are not a water pistol. I think anything else here? I think that pretty much covers everything you're going to need in order to kind of do the lab effectively. There, when we get in the lab on Tuesday, I'll show you where the first aid kit is, fire blanket, fire extinguisher, okay, all of that kind of stuff, the eye wash station, okay, and things like that. With the safety goggles, guys, they have to stay on. They are not a forehead protector, okay? Everyone like always puts them up on their forehead. That's not what they're for, okay? Make sure that they are down and over your eyes. I will only remind you twice. Okay? Third time I have to tell you, you can come over here and think about it. Okay? But I'm not going to take any chances with that. All right? Make sure that they are over your eyes at all times, please and thank you. Okay, when you are writing up the lab report, okay, like I said, we're going to have all class on Monday, so you're going to have like most of it kind of written up. It'll be due a couple of days after, so like maybe Thursday or Friday will be when the lab report will actually be due for you to hand in. It must be typed, remember, okay, so make sure that you get enough time to do that. Remember also that if you get it done ahead of time, you can bring it in to me, and I'd be happy to look it over and give you tips or pointers, tell you where, you know, if you fix this, you'll get more marks, okay, those kind of things, because I want to make sure you understand everything, and so make sure you take advantage of that. Questions? All right. Okay, on Tuesday, before we go into the lab, there will be a quiz. That quiz will be on Lesson 4, the stuff we took yesterday about ionic compounds, molecular compounds, acids, and bases, and some naming questions. All right, so there's a little bit of each. So over the weekend, or right now, you might want to take a little bit of time to look over the notes from yesterday or review your naming a little bit. I will, of course, as always, tweet the quiz on Monday. All right, but you might want to have a look over that stuff beforehand. So those are your options for what to do right now. You can start on that pre-lab stuff, or you can get that last worksheet done on naming.